They thought she was just a scientist, quiet, observant, fragile. But when the sky above Zephyr 7 burned red with the hegemony's sudden betrayal, Dr. Elena Vasquez did the unthinkable. She fought back, not as a researcher, but as a child of Earth, a death world. What began as a peaceful collaboration between alien minds would soon ignite into a galactic reckoning, as Earth's forgotten children stepped from the shadows. This is the story of how one human's secret sparked humanity's rise as guardians of the stars, and how the galaxy learned why you never provoke a death world. The twin suns of Caldrus Prime cast gentle light through the transparent aluminum dome of Research Station Zephyr 7. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood at the observation deck, watching the peaceful ballet of different alien species working together in the hydroponics lab below. To her colleagues, she appeared to be just another xenobiologist studying plant adaptation across different worlds. They had no idea she was human. For 3 years, Elena had maintained her cover among the galaxy's most brilliant scientific minds. The research station housed over 200 beings from 14 different species, all united in their quest to understand how life adapted across the cosmos. It was the perfect place for a human observer to study galactic civilization without raising suspicion. Professor Katz Zorlin, the station's lead botanist, approached with his characteristic shuffling gait. His blue-scaled Altarian features, wrinkled in what Elena had learned, was their version of a smile. His species evolved on a world with gravity barely half of what Elena was used to, making him appear fragile despite his advanced age. Dr. Vasquez, the crystalline samples from Sector 7 are showing remarkable growth patterns, Katz said, his translator converting his melodic language into standard galactic. Your theories about stress-induced evolution may be more accurate than we initially believed. Elena nodded, suppressing a bitter smile. If only he knew how accurate those theories really were. Earth had been stress-testing life for billions of years, creating the ultimate survivors. Adversity often brings out the best in living things, Professor. Sometimes the harshest environments produce the strongest species. The Altarian's large eyes studied her with curiosity. You speak as if from experience. Your homeworld must have been quite challenging. Before Elena could respond, alarms began screaming throughout the station. Emergency lights bathed the corridors in red as Captain Nix Villano's voice echoed through the communication systems. Nix belonged to the Corvani, a proud warrior species that had found peace through science rather than conquest. All personnel to emergency stations immediately. We have multiple unidentified vessels approaching at combat speed. This is not a drill. Elena's enhanced hearing picked up the subtle vibrations that others missed, the deep thrums of massive engines, the high-pitched whine of charging weapon systems. Her carefully hidden human instincts kicked into high alert. She had been trained for this possibility, though she had hoped it would never come. Professor Katz's blue scales paled to an almost white shade. Who would attack a research station? We have no military value, no strategic resources. Elena was already moving toward the emergency stations, her movements fluid and purposeful in ways that her alien colleagues had never quite noticed before. Some species don't need reasons beyond conquest, Professor. We need to get to the secure areas now. The station's main viewer activated, showing the approaching fleet. Elena's enhanced vision immediately recognized the distinctive biomechanical ships of the Hegemony Empire. Her blood ran cold. The Hegemony was known throughout this sector as a ruthless expansionist power that enslaved peaceful worlds and harvested their populations for forced labor. Captain Villano appeared on the screen, his reptilian features tense with worry. The approaching fleet belongs to the Hegemony Empire. They're demanding our immediate surrender and the transfer of all research data. They claim this system now belongs to their territory. Panicked voices filled the communication channels as researchers from across the station reported their positions. Elena listened to the fear in their voices. These were beings who had dedicated their lives to knowledge and peace, utterly unprepared for violence on this scale. The first Hegemony ship moved into firing position, its organic weapons pods extending like blooming flowers of death. Elena knew what was coming next. The Hegemony didn't negotiate. They demonstrated their power first, then offered surrender as the only alternative to extinction. A brilliant beam of energy lanced out from the lead ship, striking the station's outer ring. The explosion shook the entire structure, throwing several researchers to the floor. Elena remained standing, her enhanced balance and reflexes, allowing her to absorb the impact that would have sent others sprawling. They're targeting non-essential areas first, she said, her voice calm despite the chaos around her. Classic intimidation tactics. They want to keep the station mostly intact for their own use. Professor Katz stared at her in amazement. How do you know their tactics? You're a botanist, not a military strategist. Alina realized her mistake too late. Her training had taken over, and she was displaying knowledge that no simple researcher should possess. Around her, other scientists were looking at her with growing confusion and suspicion. Another blast shook the station, this time striking closer to the main laboratory sections. Through the viewer, Alina could see hegemony boarding pods launching from their ships, moving toward the station's docking bays like mechanical spores seeking to infect a healthy organism. Captain Villano's voice crackled through the damaged communication system. All personnel, the hegemony is preparing to board. We have minimal security forces and no military weapons. I'm authorizing the emergency protocols. Destroy any sensitive research that could be used against other worlds. Alina watched as her colleagues began frantically erasing databanks and destroying equipment. These beings had spent their lives creating knowledge, and now they were forced to destroy it to prevent it from being used for conquest. The injustice of it ignited something deep in her human core. The first boarding pod attached to the station with a metallic clang that reverberated through the hull. Alina's enhanced hearing tracked the sounds of cutting tools as the hegemony soldiers prepared to breach the airlock. She estimated 60 seconds before they gained entry. Professor, she said quietly to Keth, I need you to listen very carefully. Get everyone to the central laboratory and seal the blast doors. Don't open them for anyone except me. The Altarian's eyes widened. Dr. Vasquez, what are you planning? We can't fight them. We're scientists, not warriors. Alina was already moving toward the maintenance shafts that would give her access to the docking bay. Her movements had changed completely, flowing with a predatory grace that made several researchers step back unconsciously. The mild-mannered botanist was disappearing, replaced by something far more dangerous. You're right, Professor. You're not warriors. Alina's voice carried a new edge that none of them had heard before. But not from your worlds. She reached into her equipment case and withdrew items that had seemed like standard research tools but were actually sophisticated weapons disguised by human technology. A soil analyzer became a plasma rifle, atmospheric sensors transformed into explosive charges, and a simple communication device revealed itself as a military-grade transmitter. The shock on her colleagues' faces would have been amusing under different circumstances. Alina had spent 3 years being their quiet, thoughtful companion, never revealing that every movement, every gesture, every response had been carefully calculated to hide her true nature. What are you? Whispered Dr. Merrickx, a crystalline being whose species communicated partially through light patterns that were now flashing in distress. Alina paused at the entrance to the maintenance shaft, her enhanced physiology already adapting to the task ahead. Her heart rate slowed to preserve oxygen, her muscles tensed with stored energy, and her senses sharpened to combat levels. I'm human, she said simply, and where I come from, we don't let bullies hurt innocent people. The blast doors of the docking bay exploded inward as the hegemony soldiers breached the station. Alina had positioned herself in the maintenance shaft, directly above their entry point, watching through enhanced vision as 12 heavily armed warriors moved into the corridor. The hegemony soldiers were impressive by galactic standards, 8 feet tall, covered in biomechanical armor that enhanced their natural strength and speed. Their weapons were designed to subdue rather than kill outright, as they preferred their conquests alive or slavery. They had never encountered anything like a human before. Alina dropped from the shaft like a shadow made flesh, landing silently behind the last soldier in their formation. Her first strike disabled his armor's power systems, leaving him helpless as she moved to the next target. Her enhanced reflexes, evolved on a world where milliseconds meant the difference between life and death, made her seem almost supernatural to beings from gentler environments. The fight was over in less than 30 seconds. 12 elite hegemony warriors lay unconscious on the deck, their weapons disabled and their armor cracked. Alina hadn't killed them. Her mission parameters were clear about avoiding unnecessary casualties, but she had demonstrated the difference between predators from death worlds and those from more civilized planets. Captain Villano's voice echoed through the corridor as he and his security team arrived at the docking bay. They found Alina standing calmly among the defeated soldiers, checking her equipment as if nothing unusual had happened. Dr. Vasquez. Villano's voice was barely a whisper. How did you? What did you? Alina looked up at him, and for the first time in 3 years, she didn't hide what she was. Her eyes held the calm confidence of an apex predator. Her stance spoke of training that went far beyond civilian education, and her very presence seemed to change the atmosphere of the room. "I'm someone who's been watching over all of you," she said, "and now I need to call for backup." She activated her real communicator, sending a coded message across space toward a region that most galactic maps marked as uninhabited. The message was simple: silent watch compromised. Hegemony aggression confirmed. Request immediate intervention. As the signal raced through hyperspace toward Earth, Alina turned back to her stunned colleagues. The Gemini fleet was still out there, and more boarding parties would come soon. But now the galaxy was about to discover that the peaceful researchers weren't as defenseless as they appeared. They had been under the protection of Deathworlders all along. The storm unleashed. The Gemini War Prime Varkas studied the tactical display aboard his flagship with growing irritation. His boarding parties should have secured the research station within minutes, yet the first team had gone silent immediately after breaching the hull. The second team reported finding their comrades unconscious and their equipment disabled, but claimed no visible signs of resistance. "Impossible," Varkas growled, his forearms flexing with agitation. His species, Acrylian, had conquered 17 systems through superior size, strength, and ruthless efficiency. A research station with minimal security cannot defeat our elite warriors. His tactical officer, a nervous hegemony conscript from a recently conquered world, pointed to the scanner readings. War Prime were detecting unusual energy signatures from the station. "The patterns don't match any known technology in our databases." Varkas was about to dismiss the report when his long-range sensors detected something that made his blood freeze. Ships were dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Not the scattered merchant vessels or passenger liners they usually encountered, but military craft moving in perfect formation. "Battle stations," he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never known defeat. "How many ships?" 12 heavy cruisers, War Prime. Configuration unknown. They're moving toward us at incredible speed." On the research station, Alina felt the familiar vibration of human ships dropping into normal space. She had trained with some of those crews, knew their capabilities and their dedication to protecting innocent life. The hegemony was about to discover why humans had earned their reputation as Deathworlders. "Professor Keth," she called to the Altarian who was still staring at her in shock, "you need to get everyone to the central shielded areas. This is about to become very dangerous." Through the station's external viewers, they could see the approaching human fleet. The ships were sleek and dark, their hulls covered in adaptive armor that seemed to shift and flow like living metal. Unlike the organic curves of hegemony vessels, these ships were pure function, built for speed, protection, and devastating firepower. Commander Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus, studying the tactical situation with the cold calculation that had made her one of Earth's most effective special operations leaders. The research station showed signs of damage but was still intact, suggesting the hegemony was following their usual pattern of intimidation before conquest. "Status report," she ordered, her voice carrying the quiet authority that came from years of leading soldiers into impossible situations. "Hegemony fleet consists of 43 vessels of various classes," reported Lieutenant Torres from the sensor station. "Standard configuration for planetary conquest." They deployed boarding parties to the research station. Sarah's jaw tightened. The Gemini's methods were well known throughout human intelligence networks. They took prisoners for slavery, harvested resources without regard for environmental damage, and eliminated any resistance with brutal efficiency. They represented everything humanity had sworn to protect the galaxy against. "Signal that a Gemini fleet," Sarah commanded. "Full spectrum broadcast, all languages." The communication channel opened and Sarah's image appeared on screens throughout both fleets. To the Gemini, she looked small and fragile compared to their massive warriors. They had no idea they were looking at the product of millions of years of evolution on a world that had tried to kill humanity every single day. "Hegemony forces, this is Commander Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force. You have attacked a neutral research facility and threatened the lives of innocent beings. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." War Prime Varkas laughed, a sound like grinding metal that echoed through his ship's bridge. "Unknown species, you are vastly outnumbered. We claim this system for the Hegemony Empire. Surrender now and you will be granted the honor of serving our expansion." Sarah's expression didn't change, but every human on every ship felt the same cold anger that had driven their species to survive ice ages, supervolcanic eruptions, and countless other planetary catastrophes. They had not crossed interstellar space to watch bullies terrorize peaceful scientists. "You have 30 seconds to begin withdrawal," Sarah said calmly. "After that, we will consider you a hostile force threatening innocent lives." The transmission ended, and Varkas turned to his tactical officer. "Open fire on the lead ship. We'll make an example of them before we finish with the research station." The hegemony fleet unleashed a coordinated barrage that would have destroyed any known military force. Plasma beams and kinetic projectiles filled space with deadly energy, all focused on the human vessels that seemed impossibly small compared to their attackers. The human response came as a shock that reverberated through every hegemony ship. The adaptive armor absorbed and redirected the incoming fire, while point defense systems destroyed projectiles with precision that seemed almost supernatural. Not a single human ship took significant damage. "Return fire," Sarah ordered quietly. The human weapons were unlike anything the hegemony had encountered. Railguns fired projectiles at relativistic speeds, creating impacts that shattered even the heaviest armor. Plasma torpedoes tracked their targets with ruthless efficiency, while electronic warfare systems disrupted hegemony communications and navigation. Within minutes, 6 hegemony ships were destroyed and 12 more were crippled. The remaining vessels found themselves facing an enemy that fought with a precision and ruthlessness that spoke of evolutionary pressures beyond their understanding. War Prime Varkas watched his fleet being systematically dismantled and felt something he had never experienced before: fear. These unknown beings fought like they had been born for war, their every action calculated for maximum effectiveness with minimum waste. "Who are they?" he whispered to his tactical officer. On the research station, Alina watched the battle through the external viewers while her alien colleagues stared in amazement. The human fleet moved like a school of predatory fish, each ship anticipating the other's movements with perfect coordination. "Those are my people," she said quietly to Professor Keth. "They came because we called for help." The Altarian's eyes were wide with wonder and terror. "Your people fight like they were created for war." Alina nodded solemnly. "In a way, we were. Our world spent millions of years teaching us that survival meant being stronger, faster, and smarter than everything trying to kill us. We learned those lessons very well." Commander Chen's voice came through the station's communication system, speaking directly to Elena. "Observer 7, this is Prometheus Command. Status report." Alina activated her real communicator, no longer concerned about maintaining her cover. "Station is secure, Commander. Minimal casualties among research personnel. Hegemony boarding parties neutralized." "Copy that, Observer 7. We're moving to secure the system. Recommend you begin diplomatic protocols with station personnel." As the battle continued in space, Alina turned to face her colleagues. Beings from 14 different species looked at her with expressions ranging from awe to terror to curiosity. She had spent 3 years earning their trust as a fellow scientist, and now she had to help them understand that their quiet companion was actually their protector. "I know you have questions," she began, "and I'll answer them as best I can. But first, you need to understand that everything is about to change." Captain Villano stepped forward, his reptilian features showing the confusion that all of them felt. "Dr. Vasquez, Elena, who are you really? What is your species?" Elena looked out at the stars where human ships were finishing the destruction of the hegemony fleet. Soon the galaxy would know that humanity existed, and that they had been watching over the peaceful species for longer than anyone imagined. "We're called humans," she said, "and we come from a world that most species would consider a death trap. But that world taught us something important. The strong have a responsibility to protect those who cannot protect themselves." The last hegemony ships were retreating in disorder, their fleet shattered, and their confidence broken. Word would spread quickly through their empire about the mysterious warriors who had appeared from nowhere to defend a simple research station. War Prime Varkas, his flagship damaged but still functional, transmitted a final message before jumping to hyperspace. "This is not over, unknown species. The hegemony empire will learn your weaknesses and return in greater force." Sarah Chen's response followed him into hyperspace, carried by quantum communication systems that the hegemony didn't know existed. "We'll be waiting." As the immediate threat ended, Alina began the delicate process of explaining to her colleagues that their galaxy had just discovered it had guardians, beings from its death world who had chosen to use their evolutionary advantages not for conquest, but for protection. The age of unchecked aggression was about to end. The new galactic order. 3 months after the Battle of Zephyr 7, as historians were already calling it, the Galactic Council convened its first emergency session in over a century. Representatives from 47 different species gathered in the Great Chamber on Nexus Prime, their conversations filled with tension and uncertainty. High Counselor Arius Selenix, whose crystalline Vorthic species had led the Council for generations, called for order with a harmonious chime that resonated through the chamber. Her translucent form caught the light as she addressed the assembled delegates. Honored representatives, we face an unprecedented situation. A previously unknown species has emerged from the galactic rim, demonstrating military capabilities that exceed our combined fleets. We must determine their intentions and our response. Admiral Marcus Webb stood in the center of the chamber, his human form drawing curious stares from beings who had never seen his species before. Unlike Alina, who had hidden among them for years, Marcus made no attempt to appear harmless. His presence radiated the quiet confidence of someone who had faced danger throughout his life and emerged victorious. Honored counselors, Marcus began, his voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. I am Admiral Marcus Webb, representing the Terran Federation. We come before you not as conquerors, but as guardians who can no longer remain hidden. Senator Thorvik of the Hegemony, one of the few surviving war primes from the Zephyr 7 disaster, stepped forward aggressively. His massive form towered over the human admiral, but Marcus showed no sign of intimidation. You destroyed an entire fleet without provocation, Thorvik accused. Your species appears from nowhere claiming to be protectors, but you fight like demons from the void. Marcus met his gaze steadily. We destroyed your fleet because it was attacking innocent researchers. If you consider defending the helpless to be demonic behavior, then we are proud to be your demons. The chamber erupted in discussions as delegates realized the implications. Ambassador Kellix of the Altarian Union, Professor Kett's cousin, stood to address the assembly. The human presence changes everything we thought we knew about our galaxy. Dr. Elena Vasquez worked alongside our scientists for 3 years. We never suspected she was anything other than a dedicated researcher. How many more of your people are hidden among our populations? Marcus activated a holographic display that showed star maps spanning the entire galaxy. Hundreds of systems were marked with discrete indicators, showing the scope of humanity's long-term observation program. For the past century, we have maintained observers in 43 different civilizations, Marcus explained. Scientists, traders, diplomats, and researchers, all human, all watching over their adopted communities. We have prevented 17 wars, stopped 12 attempts at genocide, and protected countless worlds from exploitation. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembly. Species that had considered themselves isolated discovered they had been under human protection for decades. Trade routes they thought were naturally safe had been secretly patrolled. Conflicts that had mysteriously resolved themselves had been influenced by human intervention. High Counselor Selenix processed this information with the calm calculation her species was known for. Admiral Webb, your people have been manipulating galactic politics for a century without our knowledge or consent. This could be considered an act of aggression in itself. Marcus nodded respectfully. We understand your concern, Counselor, but consider the alternative. In the past century, how many peaceful worlds have been conquered? How many species have been enslaved? How many promising civilizations have been destroyed by aggressive empires? He changed the holographic display to show comparative statistics. The data was stark. Aggressive expansion had decreased by over 70% during the period of human intervention. Piracy was down, trade was up, and the overall stability of the galaxy had improved dramatically. We didn't reveal ourselves because we wanted your gratitude, Marcus continued. We remained hidden because open intervention would have changed the natural development of your civilizations. But events like the hegemony attack on Zephyr 7 force us to make difficult choices. Senator Thorvik's 4 arms flexed with barely controlled rage. The hegemony empire has conquered worlds for millennia. It is our nature, our right. You have no authority to interfere with our expansion. The human admiral's expression hardened slightly, and every sensitive being in the chamber felt a subtle shift in the atmosphere. Marcus didn't raise his voice or make threatening gestures, but something in his presence suggested that he was far more dangerous than his calm demeanor indicated. Senator, your empire's right to conquest ends where innocent beings' right to exist begins. Earth's children have seen what happens when aggressive species are allowed to expand unchecked. We won't allow it to happen again. Ambassador Jorg Thane of the Peaceful Worlds Alliance, whose species had narrowly avoided hegemony conquests the previous year, stood to speak. His insectoid features showed the gratitude that many smaller civilizations felt. Admiral Webb, many of us owe our continued existence to human intervention, whether we knew it or not. But what do you want from us now? What are the terms of this protection you offer? Marcus deactivated the holographic display and addressed the assembly directly. We want nothing from you except the right to continue protecting those who cannot protect themselves. We offer formal diplomatic relations, technology sharing where appropriate, and guaranteed protection for any species that requests it. And if we refuse? Asked Counselor Vex of the Dominion Worlds, whose civilization had built its power through economic exploitation of smaller species. The human admiral's smile was not entirely pleasant. Then you refuse. We won't force ourselves on anyone. But we also won't ignore calls for help from innocent beings, regardless of what their governments might prefer. The implication was clear to everyone in the chamber. Humanity was offering partnership to those who wanted peace and promising protection to those who needed it. But they were also serving notice that the age of unchecked aggression was over. High Counselor Selenix called for a recess while the delegates consulted with their governments. As the chamber emptied, small groups formed around different philosophies. The peaceful species gravitated toward the human position, while the more aggressive civilizations huddled together to discuss their options. During the break, Alina arrived from Zephyr 7, where she had been helping coordinate the integration of human protection protocols with existing station security. Her alien colleagues had voted unanimously to request formal human protection, making their research station one of the first to openly join what was being called the Terran Protective Covenant. She found Marcus in the diplomatic quarters, reviewing reports from human observers across the galaxy. The revelation of their presence had triggered a wave of new intelligence as hidden agents revealed themselves to their host communities. How are they taking it? Elena asked, settling into a chair designed for beings much larger than humans. Marcus looked up from his data pad. Better than expected, worse than hoped. The peaceful species are relieved to know they've had protection all along. The aggressive ones are furious that their expansion has been limited. The council is split almost evenly. Alina nodded, having expected as much. What about the hegemony? Had they accepted the new reality? Officially, they're calling for a full investigation into human activities. Unofficially, their border raids have stopped completely, and they're fortifying their home systems. They're scared, Alina. For the first time in their history, they've encountered something they can't defeat through brute force. When the council reconvened, High Counselor Selenix announced the preliminary decision. After extensive consultation, the Galactic Council recognizes the Terran Federation as a legitimate interstellar power. We establish formal diplomatic relations and acknowledge your right to protect species that request your assistance. It was a diplomatic victory, but Marcus knew the real work was just beginning. Several aggressive species had walked out of the session rather than accept human oversight of their expansion plans. The hegemony, in particular, was already planning their response to this new threat to their dominance. Admiral Webb, Counselor Selenix continued, the Council requires assurance that humanity will not use its superior military capabilities for conquest. What guarantees can you provide? Marcus stood once more, his presence commanding attention from every being in the chamber. High Counselor, I can offer you the same guarantee we've lived by for over a century of hidden observation. We seek no territory beyond our home system. We claim no tribute or payment for our protection. We ask only for the right to trade freely and to respond when innocent beings call for help. And if humanity changes its mind? Pressed Senator Crix of the Military Coalition. If future generations decide conquest is preferable to protection. The human admiral was quiet for a long moment, considering his words carefully. Senator, our world spent millions of years teaching us that survival requires adaptation. But our civilization taught us that survival without purpose is meaningless. We found our purpose in protecting those who cannot protect themselves. If we ever abandon that purpose, we will no longer be the species that deserves to survive. The formal vote was close. 24 species in favor of the Terran Protective Covenant, 21 opposed, and 2 abstaining. It was enough to establish humanity's official status as galactic guardians, but the narrow margin indicated how divided the galaxy remained. As the council session concluded, Elena found herself back aboard a human ship for the first time in years. The UES Harmony was carrying her back to Zephyr 7, where she would continue her research, now openly as a human xenobiologist under the protection of her own species. Do you think it will work? she asked Admiral Webb as they watched the stars through the observation deck. Marcus considered the question seriously. The galaxy is going to change whether we're here or not, Elena. The question is whether it changes toward greater cooperation or greater conflict. We've given the peaceful species hope and the aggressive ones pause. That's the best we can do. And if the aggressive ones decide to unite against us? The Admiral's smile held no warmth. Then they'll discover why our world produced survivors, Elena. We've been fighting extinction-level threats since before we could make fire. A few conquest-minded empires won't be our greatest challenge. As the ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying Elena back to her research and Marcus toward his next diplomatic mission, both humans knew they were part of something larger than themselves. Humanity had emerged from the shadows to become the galaxy's guardians, not through conquest or intimidation, but through the simple belief that the strong should protect the weak. The Death World had produced its children well. Now they would make sure that no other species would face extinction alone. The first test, Captain Rex Thorne stood on the bridge of the UES Vigilant, watching the peaceful traffic patterns of the Harmony sector, with the relaxed attention of a predator at rest. 6 months had passed since the establishment of the Terran Protective Covenant, and this patrol route had become routine. The sector contained 12 inhabited worlds, all members of peaceful species that had requested human protection after learning of humanity's existence. Rex was a veteran of the Outer Rim conflicts, a man whose weathered face told stories of battles fought in the darkness between stars. His crew respected him not just for his tactical brilliance, but for his unwavering commitment to protecting innocent life. They had no idea they were about to face their greatest challenge yet. Captain called Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the sensor station, her voice tight with concern. I'm picking up massive hyperspace distortions at the edge of the system. Multiple contacts inbound. Rex moved to the tactical display with the fluid grace that marked all human movement in space. His enhanced reflexes evolved on a world where split-second decisions meant survival. Processed the incoming data faster than most species could even perceive it. How many ships, Lieutenant? Over 300, sir. Configuration matches Cinder and Empire vessels. They're coming in fast, and they're not responding to hails. Rex felt his blood turn cold. The Cinderan Empire was one of the largest military powers in the galaxy, commanded by Empress Sarah Keth, a brilliant strategist who had been openly critical of human intervention in galactic affairs. If they were moving in force against a protected sector, it meant they were testing humanity's resolve. Signal Earth Command immediately, Rex ordered, Priority Alpha. Then get me Admiral Webb. The main viewer flickered to life, showing Admiral Marcus Webb in his command center on Nexus Prime. The veteran officer's expression grew grim as Rex briefed him on the situation. How long until they reach the inhabited worlds? Webb asked. 4 hours, sir. The Vigilant is the only human ship in the sector. The nearest reinforcements are 8 hours away. Webb was quiet for a moment, processing the tactical nightmare. One human ship against 300 Cinderan vessels was impossible odds by any conventional measure. But humanity had never been bound by conventional measures. Rex, you know what this is. They're testing our commitment. If we abandon those worlds, every aggressive empire in the galaxy will know that human protection has limits. Rex nodded grimly. He had expected this day would come eventually. The peaceful establishment of the Protective Covenant had been too easy to clean. The galaxy's aggressive powers needed to test whether humans would really sacrifice themselves for strangers. Orders, sir. Protect those worlds, Captain, whatever it takes. Help is coming, but you need to buy us time. The transmission ended, leaving Rex alone with the weight of 12 worlds and millions of innocent lives, depending on his decisions. He turned to address his crew, men and women who had volunteered for this mission, knowing they might be called upon to face impossible odds. All hands, this is the captain. We have incoming hostiles in overwhelming numbers. Our mission is to protect the civilian populations of this sector until reinforcements arrive. I won't lie to you, the odds are against us. But that's never stopped humans before, and it won't stop us now. The crew responded with the quiet determination that had carried humanity through ice ages, plagues, and countless other extinction events. They were afraid. Only a fool wouldn't be afraid. But they were also ready to do their duty. On the planet Serenity below, Dr. Yuki Tanaka was conducting her weekly cultural exchange seminar with local educators when the emergency alerts began sounding. As humanity's chief cultural specialist in the Harmony sector, Yuki had spent months building relationships with the peaceful species under human protection. The Serenians were gentle herbivores whose society had never known warfare. Their large expressive eyes reflected confusion and terror as they looked to Yuki for guidance. To them, she represented the strength and protection that had allowed their civilization to flourish without fear. Dr. Tanaka called Elder Morin, the planetary leader. "What do these alarms mean? Are we in danger?" Yuki activated her emergency communicator, linking directly to Captain Thorne's ship. The news was as bad as she had feared. She turned to the assembled Serenians with the calm confidence that humans had learned to project in crisis situations. "There's a hostile fleet approaching the sector. Captain Thorne and his crew will do everything possible to protect you, but we need to implement emergency protocols immediately." The evacuation procedures that humans had established were efficient but voluntary. Unlike the authoritarian methods used by aggressive empires, human protection was built on cooperation and trust. Yuki coordinated with local authorities to move populations to reinforce shelters, while maintaining the social structures that made these civilizations worth protecting. In space, the Sindarin fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a plague of metallic locusts. Empress Zura Keth stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Dominator, studying the tactical display with satisfaction. Her intelligence networks had confirmed that only a single human ship patrolled this sector. "Your Majesty," reported her tactical officer, "we detect one human vessel holding position near the fourth planet. They're broadcasting surrender demands." Zora's reptilian features twisted in what her species considered a smile. She was a brilliant military mind who had conquered 12 systems through superior strategy and overwhelming force. The humans had gained their reputation by fighting weaker opponents and using psychological warfare. Today she would prove that humanity was not invincible. "Ignore their demands. Begin bombardment of the outer worlds. We'll demonstrate the cost of relying on human protection." The Sindarin fleet split into attack formations, each group targeting a different inhabited world. Their weapons were designed for planetary assault. Massive plasma cannons that could crack continents and bioweapons that would make entire worlds uninhabitable. Captain Thorne watched the enemy deployment with the calculating gaze of a master tactician. 300 ships against one seemed impossible, but Rex had learned something during his years fighting the Outer Rim. Numbers meant nothing if you could control when and where the battle was fought. "Helm, take us into the asteroid field near Serenity," he commanded. Full stealth mode. "Weapons prepare for precision strikes." The Vigilant disappeared into the dense asteroid field like a predator taking cover in tall grass. Human ships were designed for this kind of warfare, single vessels operating independently against superior numbers, using superior technology and tactics to multiply their effectiveness. The first Sindarin attack group approached Serenity with confidence, their sensors focused on the planet's surface rather than the surrounding space. They never saw the human ship until its first salvo tore through their formation. Rex had chosen his targets carefully. The Vigilance weapons were focused on the Sindarin command ships, the vessels that coordinated their fleet movements. Without central coordination, the attack formation began to break apart as individual captains tried to respond to a threat they couldn't locate. "Target destroyed," reported Weapons Officer Martinez. Moving to secondary targets. The Vigilance struck again and again, appearing from behind asteroids to deliver devastating attacks before disappearing back into the rocky maze. Each strike was precisely calculated to cause maximum disruption, with minimum exposure to return fire. Empress Zora watched her attack formations fall into chaos with growing fury. The human ship was fighting like no opponent she had ever encountered, not as a traditional naval vessel, but as an ambushed predator using the terrain to its advantage. "Deploy hunter-killer squadrons," she commanded. "Find that ship and destroy it." 50 Sindarin fighters swept into the asteroid field, their sensors probing every shadow and crevice. But hunting humans in their chosen terrain was like trying to catch shadows with bare hands. The Vigilant had been designed by a species that had learned stealth from predators and prey alike. The fighters found nothing but empty space and drifting rocks. Meanwhile, the human ship continued its devastating attacks on the larger vessels, systematically destroying the coordination that held the Sindarin fleet together. On Serenity, Dr. Yuki Tanaka coordinated the civilian evacuation while monitoring the battle overhead. Through her enhanced vision, she could see the brief flashes of weapons fire as Captain Thorne's ship fought against impossible odds. "Doctor," Elder Morn approached her with tears in his large eyes. Your people are dying to protect us. Why? We can offer you nothing in return." Yuki paused in her coordination efforts to look at the gentle being who represented everything humanity had sworn to protect. "Elder, on our world, we learned that survival isn't just about staying alive. It's about preserving what makes life worth living. Your people represent beauty and peace in a galaxy that often forgets the value of both." The battle raged for 3 hours, with the Vigilant continuing its deadly game of hit-and-run warfare. Rex and his crew fought with the desperate efficiency of cornered predators, knowing that every minute they delayed the Cinder in advance was another minute for reinforcements to arrive. But even human endurance had limits. The Vigilant's stealth systems were overheating, her weapons were running low on ammunition, and structural damage was beginning to compromise her maneuverability. "Captain," reported Lieutenant Kim, "I'm detecting hyperspace signatures at the edge of the system. Multiple contacts incoming." Rex felt a surge of hope as Earth's reinforcements arrived. 12 human ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their arrival time to catch the Cinderin fleet scattered and disorganized. Admiral Webb's voice came through the communication system, carrying the cold authority of humanity's military might. "Cinderin fleet, this is Admiral Marcus Webb of the Terran Defense Force. You have attacked worlds under our protection. Surrender immediately or face the consequences." Empress Ur realized her mistake too late. By scattering her forces to hunt a single ship, she had given the humans exactly what they wanted, a divided enemy that could be defeated in detail. The arriving human fleet moved with mechanical precision, each ship targeting specific enemy formations with devastating effect. The Battle of Harmony Sector lasted only 40 minutes after human reinforcements arrived. The Cinderin fleet was either destroyed or in full retreat, their invasion plans shattered by superior human tactics, and their willingness to sacrifice everything for the protection of innocent life. Captain Thorne brought the damaged Vigilant back to Serenity, where crowds of grateful civilians waited to thank their protectors. Elder Morin approached the landing party with tears streaming down his face. "Captain Thorne, we will never forget what you and your crew did for us today. You faced death to protect strangers." Rex looked out at the crowd of peaceful beings whose lives had been saved by human intervention. "Elder, you're not strangers anymore. You're family, and family protects family." News of the Battle of Harmony Sector spread across the galaxy faster than hyperspace itself. The image of a single human ship holding off 300 enemy vessels became legend, inspiring peaceful species and terrifying aggressive empires. In the weeks that followed, 47 more species requested human protection. The Terran Protective Covenant grew from a diplomatic experiment into the galaxy's most powerful alliance, built not on conquest or tribute, but on the simple promise that innocent beings would never face extinction alone. The first test was over. Humanity had proven that their protection was more than just words. It was a commitment sealed in blood and sacrifice, backed by the evolutionary advantages of a species that had learned to survive anything the universe could throw at them. The Deathworld's children had passed their trial by fire, and the galaxy would never be the same.